And I wanted to introduce to you this concept of the fulfilled, meaningful life and this model that I've created to help us to understand if we want to have a life that's thriving, a life that's meaningful, a life that's fulfilling and satisfying and joyful and exciting, we need to understand the framework and how to get there. And so if you look at the model that I've sent out, the fulfilled, meaningful life, this is the goal. This is where we want to get to. And I like to use the analogy of the house. Many of you might remember the story, lots of us learned it when we were kids, when we went to Sunday school, of the two builders. And so the first builder, he built his house on the sand. And the second builder, he built his house on a rock. And when the storms came, and you can see the storms in the picture here, the storms being the suffering, the hardships, the loss. When the storms came, the house that was built on the sand fell flat. Meanwhile, the house that was on the rock was able to stand firm. And sure, maybe there was a little bit of storm damage. There were some things that needed to be fixed after the storm was over, but the foundation was solid and the house was still standing. Where that's the analogy that I want you to be thinking about when we talk about this. So when you look at this picture that I've created here for you, you'll notice we're going to work from the bottom up for a minute. The very bottom, it says faith. Now faith, for people who are religious or spiritual, faith might be a lot easier concept to understand and how this works. But faith can also just be having faith in yourself, having faith in humanity, having faith in your purpose, having faith in the universe, however that might look. For myself, I come from a Christian background, so it makes a lot more sense to me to talk about it as faith. But you are more than welcome to fit in the words that make more sense to you in that. But it's these overarching belief system, this foundational belief system that we hold. And that is going to inform these three different pillars. Now, the first pillar is looking at this idea of who am I? It is about self-definition, and it's about identity. So we need to have a good, solid understanding of who we are. If we want this fulfilling, meaningful life, we start with a good foundation. And that includes understanding who am I? The second pillar being, where do I belong? It's relatedness. It's connecting with people. It's connecting with ourselves. It is connecting with God or our higher power or our spirituality, whatever that might look like for you. What is my meaning and purpose? It's what motivates you? What are your passions? Is there a higher purpose in your life that you are motivated to pursue? And so all of those three pillars, they all are linked together, because how is anyone really going to understand what their meaning and purpose is if they don't know where they belong in the world? And how are you going to know where you belong in the world if you don't know who you are, right? You have to first know who you are in order to connect who you are. And when you connect who you are, that's when we start to really develop those passions and find ways to effectively use those passions. So those three pillars together, that is what creates this foundation of resilience, so that we can build this life and have a thriving life that's fulfilling and meaningful and is strong enough to withstand the difficult storms that we might be facing. And so think about, in terms of that house, that is you. Like, you are your life, and you get to choose what you're going to do with it, how you're going to use your life in a way that's valuable. So you are the one who contributes value to your life by making those choices on what is valuable to you. And then when difficult times come, meaningful living, it gives us the power to transcend the suffering, to rise above the suffering, to rise above the difficulties, and to be able to thrive in spite of the difficulties. And essentially, we can transform the pains and the suffering into our power, and we can use them to empower ourselves and to empower others. Another quote I just wanted to share with you. This is another of my favorite writers. This is Dr. Paul Wong. Dr. Paul Wong is a psychologist based out of Toronto. And he says, to live is to suffer, and to survive is to find some meaning in it. So what he's saying is, if we're living, we are going to have suffering, and we're going to survive the suffering by finding meaning in the suffering. And when I would take it one step further, when we learn how to survive by finding meaning, we actually are starting to really thrive. So a meaning-filled life, what does that look like? It seeks to make a contribution to the world. Some of you might remember the quote by JFK, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. So thinking in terms of that is a meaningful life is not just about what do I do for me, it's about turning that outward and saying, what can I do for others? What is this purpose of my life that makes a contribution to society? So a meaningful life that is fulfilled and built on a foundation of meaning, that's the thriving life that we're all looking for. And it's resilient and it's strong and it's confident. It's connected. It is fulfilled, it's meaningful, it's purposeful, it's satisfied, it's hopeful, and it's perseverance, so that even in the face of the difficult times like the storms, we can persevere through it and keep moving forward. And the fact is, the storms in life are always going to come. And as a whole society, we are facing probably one of the biggest storms we will ever face as a collective. But even on an individual basis, there was always going to be storms. There's going to be suffering. There's going to be adversity. So having that strong foundation is going to help keep you standing in the midst of the storms. Viktor Frankl, as I mentioned him before, he says, he who knows the why for his existence will be able to bear almost any how. So let's look at finding opportunities in the isolation. We have the opportunity of time more than anything, no matter what your finances are looking like, no matter what your job prospect is looking like, no matter what your social activities are looking like, no matter any of those things, right now, time is the greatest opportunity for most of us have. We have time to rest and rejuvenate, with the exception of some healthcare workers that are going through tons right now in working overtime. But for the rest of us, there's some time to rest and rejuvenate. There's time for you to get on some tasks that you've been too busy to do. It's time to catch up on some things that are important, but maybe have slipped to the bottom of the priorities because we've been busy. We have some time for some self-reflection and personal development, time to learn a new skill or revive a new hobby. We have some time for some fun. Make time for fun. Find creative ways to have fun. We have time to cultivate connections. So connecting with yourself, connecting with your passions, connecting with other people, connecting with your faith, making connections. We have time for that maybe we wouldn't normally. We have time to assess our goals, and then we can change our goals and we can adjust them, or we can create new ones. Quite often we get in the busyness of life and we have this goal and we're so busy trying to pursue that goal that we don't have the time to actually reflect on whether that goal is a good goal for us, or whether that goal is a doable goal. And so Thursday we are going to talk specifically about setting SMART goals and how to set a goal, goals that are effective. So just to give you the heads up, we will be getting more into that as the week goes on. So some final thoughts is be inspired and find ways to inspire others. If you want to thrive, find the awesome in everyday life. There is awesome all around us. Whether it's you look outside and you are seeing the spring flowers starting to bloom and the leaves coming back on the trees, or you're looking outside and maybe you live in an area where there's still snow, but you see some of the spring birds starting to come back. It's just finding the awesome, and maybe it's finding the awesome in the people in your house and looking at them through fresh eyes, looking for the awesome in the people in your life. Developing a sense of gratitude, being thankful for what you do have. Yes, we know there's lots of insecurity, there's lots of uncertainty, but there are some things that you still have, and being grateful for those things. Get creative. Find something to create a creative outlet within yourself. Find a creative outlet. Make something. Do something in a different way. Cook a meal that you've never prepared before. Find a new recipe. Cook something new. Pull out some arts and crafts supplies. Go online and look at tutorial videos on new things that you could do even within your own house. But find something creative to do. That's another way that we can thrive. And so again, I'm going to leave you with the words of Maya Angelou again, just to reflect on those a minute. So my mission in life is not merely to survive, but to thrive, to do so with passion, some compassion, some humor, and some style. Find a reason to laugh this week. Find the humor. I'm starting to see lots of memes popping up now in social media. People are saying, okay, we've had enough of the depressing stuff. We need a reason to smile. I have friends that are posting daily jokes right now. Find some humor. Find a reason to laugh. Reasons to smile. And so some self-reflection. And this is something that you can do on your own afterwards, is I want you to think about, in the last 2 weeks, what have you accomplished? Who have you reached out to? Did you do anything to make life better for someone else? What do you hope to accomplish over the next week? And the last question is, what brings you joy and how can you increase that joy during this following week?